Well, it's so great to be here with you. I was here in Virginia Beach about a year ago, but I told Lisa today, every time I've been here, I hadn't even seen the ocean until today. So I'm like, that's one of the great places to be here, right? So thank you for coming tonight and hearing what we have to say about the museum, about our life, about my life, and there's a lot to share. I hardly knew where to start with 25 to 30 minutes because I could fill up a lot more time. I've learned a lot about different seasons and changes in my own life. I'll share a little bit with you tonight. But first I want to just start, let me get my clicker going on all this. Right here, 1984. This is my husband, Steve, and I. We were married in 1984. Anybody else married in 1984? Yep, it was burgundy and pink, right? Yes, yes. So anyway, that's where it all started. And Steve and I were just kids. We didn't realize we were, but we were 18 and 20, and we didn't know much. But we were very much in love and wanted to spend our lives on the journey together. And so it's been quite a journey. We've been married now 39 years. So we have, thank you. Thank you. But we've had some exciting times and some hard times like all of you, because nobody goes through life without both, right? So next in 2009, now we had our 6 kids here, and our first granddaughter up at the top with our daughter-in-law and son. We have 1 son and 5 daughters. And then our son-in-law and our redheaded daughter over on the left, that's Lauren. She's the one I wrote the book Only One Life with. If those of you that are here that get the book, hopefully you'll get to read it. It's something that every woman can relate to. Lisa told you a little bit about it, but we have 3 chapters of different ways you can leave a legacy, whether it's through a legacy of prayer or just all different ways. 12 ways that we focused on, and we used three women in each chapter that exemplified that well. A woman in the Bible, and a woman in history, and a modern day woman that showed us different ways. And I'm telling you, it was just so much fun to realize that it doesn't matter where you are in life or what your experience is, that God can use you to do great things. So that's how that got started with my redhead over there. And then we have, you might see our youngest right behind my head there at the bottom, and she was born in another country. We adopted our 6th child. She was born in China. So in 2009, I have a new grandchild. I have a newly married daughter. I have 2 kids in college. I have, junior high, elementary. I mean, we're all across the board doing life, very busy. My husband was president of Hobby Lobby, which is a big job, and full-time, and it is a family business. My husband was 7 when his dad and mom started the business, and he started putting frames together in their home for 7 cents a frame, and he said that's how he made his bubblegum money. So anyway, so we were very busy doing every stage of life at the same time and trying to fulfill our mission that we felt like as young marrieds. We sat down and said, what's our purpose? What's God got for us in life? What do we really want to focus on and be intentional with? And we both agreed that we felt like raising godly generations was our heart's desire. So we didn't know we were going to have 6 kids. I thought 3. But God had other plans, and here we are today. So we were busy, but along that time, in that time frame, some guys came to my husband and said, we really want to put in a Bible museum in Dallas, Texas. And we're like, that's great. We love that idea. It's a great idea. How can we come along and support? And so, out of a heart of helping someone else do this, we started on this journey. And then we found ourselves going different places around the world. We were in Sotheby's of London with this. This was one of my favorite manuscripts, actually. It's called the Codex Commachi-Rescriptus, those of you that have been there. It came from Sotheby's, and they handed it to me and said, did I want to hold it? So I'm looking like, is it okay to touch this? So anyway, then we were at Christie's. We were at all of the auction houses around the world growing this collection, and it started going very fast because in the economy at the time, 2009, a lot of universities and people that had wonderful manuscripts were needing funds, so they were selling. So we're buying thinking we're going to give this to this museum in Dallas, but God had another plan and really laid on our hearts the the responsibility, we felt this mantle on our shoulders to make sure that these artifacts were shared with the world, and each of them who had a fabulous story to tell, it was shared. We didn't want it to be locked away in vaults and closets around the world. Steve and I both grew up in a Christian home, so we were in church cutting our teeth on the pews, just as babies, always in church. And we were blessed with that, but I didn't know that there were these amazing artifacts and things from every time period. The transmission of the word is an incredible story. And I didn't know there were things that you could go look at that supported and validated this Bible, the Word of God that I loved. And, we wanted to make sure it was shared. So we found ourselves on this journey. And here we are in a room in 2010 when we realized the guys in Dallas didn't have the wherewithal, a collection, or a building. So we're like, okay, Lord, here we go. We are willing to walk in faith and obedience to what we feel like you've laid on our hearts and open doors for. And so we had a meeting here. You can see big Post-it notes on the wall in the back of this conference room. And we've got a guy down there at the end. He's just drawing everything that we were dreaming up. Well, we need to have a room, like the focus on the Old Testament or the New Testament. And anyway, he'd draw things and just put it on the wall. So we were dreaming. This is our dream meeting. And we just shut ourselves in the room for a couple of days to just figure out, what do you tell about the Bible? I mean, can't tell everything. I mean, there's so much to tell. And so we were trying to nail it down and just still walking in faith, not knowing really where it was going to land. Then we had this traveling exhibit because now we've got a collection, we've got a plan, but we don't have a building. And a building would be important. So this was actually in Colorado, and we called the traveling exhibit Passages. We went through 6 cities in the U.S. while we're waiting, watching, trying to find a building. And my husband had a survey done and focused on, they called 1,000 people across the U.S., just random survey, and asked them, would you come? Because, there are a lot of great ideas of things that you can do, but if people don't come, it's not going to work. So the guy that does these surveys, when he came back, he said, I am shocked and overwhelmed with the results because this is a win. We never get these numbers. And people said they would come. And then one of the questions was, would you be more likely to go to New York City, D.C., Dallas? We would have liked Dallas. It's a 3-hour drive from Oklahoma City. But, we wanted it to be where more people would be there, and it made sense that more people would go to D.C. to a museum, right? And then, honestly, for me, I love that it's there where you can just see the nation's capital of the most powerful country in the world right there out the windows. And I know people that come to the museum, they are praying over our country and our nation and our leadership. So we were traveling, and we also went to other countries. We got to go to Italy twice, to Rome, at the Vatican. We were invited to bring the exhibit there. We met the Pope. This was in 2012. We went back in 2014. And then we also were invited because the Pope told the leadership in Cuba, you should have this exhibit that I look out my window at. It's amazing and fabulous. You should invite them to come. So Cuba invited us to bring the exhibit. Nobody was going to Cuba, and I honestly thought I wasn't going to get out. It was a really different experience. They're telling us now, you have to go on this charter plane, and it looked like something from 1952 or something. I don't know. It had a hole in the side, too. I don't know. It was not a good thing. But anyway, we went in 2014 to Havana, Cuba. That's where this was. And the leadership in their country wouldn't let them do any PR and marketing for the exhibit that was coming to this cathedral. But all of the churches came together, and it was word of mouth. And in 6 weeks, they had like 30,000 people come through. So there was such a hunger there. It was just so humbling. And you'll see there's an orchestra in this particular picture. They had, through the arts of different connections with the churches, all the churches in Cuba, which I didn't even know there were really churches in Cuba. I just didn't know. And they came together and put together this musical with all the different arts of the whole story of the Bible. It was just amazing. And in this courtyard in Havana, there were like 1,000 chairs set up, and it was every seat filled. People were standing. They were on the balconies of the buildings all around. They were down the streets. it was just an incredible thing. So we knew that God was leading and guiding and directing. We were not pushing this. It was just the doors opening. And so that's a great feeling, right? So we were in Cuba twice. Then in 2012, we found, we also went to Germany and Argentina and Israel. We found a building in 2012, and this is once the demolition had started. We kept the outer wall of this. It was the first refrigerated warehouse in DC, where a train used to come into the end and offload the meats and the ice blocks into this building. And then before we acquired it, it was the Washington Design Center. I don't know if any of you would have been in that building. It looked very different than it does today. But we took out every other floor, dug another floor underneath, added a floor across the top. So you'll see the finished picture here in a little bit. But it was quite an endeavor. And we were really excited to get such a great location in DC. Buildings do not become available in DC very often. And the government owns most of them. So the Kennedy family was selling this one. And we felt like another open door from God, just at the perfect timing. But also, here's where it goes to a different season. We were in a very difficult season. Some of you might remember in 2012 ourselves, from 2012 to 2014, going through all the courts, the federal courts up to the Supreme Court, in a fight for freedom of religion with the HHS mandate that was being put upon many people across the country. And so we found ourselves being at the front line of that fight. Some of you were involved in that too, I know. This was not just our fight. This was a fight for all of us, for freedom of religion, for individuals in our country. And we just thank God that we had a win. So, but yeah, praise God for that. But that was a hard 2 years. We had this one journey, the path, where we have a building now. This is going to happen. The construction was underway and things were going really well. And then in the other path, it's very stressful, very hard season. I think probably every night during that 2 years, I woke up at 4 a.m. And for a while, I was like, what in the world? Why can't I get to sleep? What is going on? And then I realized, you know what? Some of the best part of my day was that time, because I would find myself praying, when you're awake in the middle of the night for no reason. It's a good thing to do, let me just say. Just start praying. And that would help me get my mindset straight, help set my fear and anxiety aside. I would go back to sleep for about 30 minutes before I had to get the kids up, get ready for school. But it helped me get my day started off in the right place. And right after, I began to thank God for waking me up at 4 a.m. and embrace that and say, thank you, God, for caring enough to wake me up at 4 a.m. every morning so we can have time together and I can start my day and get my head and my heart in the right place. But right after that ruling, I started sleeping all night again. It was just great. So I just think that was something that God provided for me because He cared. So anyway, then in 2014, we started our first event. Now we've got this museum that's coming. Our opening date was set to be in 2017. And we're like, well, now what do? We've got to tell the world. We've got to get more people on board. And so we started having events, and that was our first one, October of 2014. And, it was great, the excitement that was building around that. And on time and on budget, which never happens, right? Anybody that's built a house, this is 430,000 square feet. That was a miracle. Yes, and so on budget and on time, we were able to have the opening of the museum, and it was just such a day of celebration. Everybody that came, from all different denominations and churches were just celebrating because this is a museum that honors the Bible, which so many of us love. And it happened, and so many people said, why has this never happened before? And I don't know. I guess there wasn't somebody crazy enough to undertake it. I don't know. But anyway, it was a great day, and we're so grateful for that. And people started lining up. The first year we had 1 million people go through. And so that was a real blessing, right? The museum's mission is inviting all people to engage with the transformative power of the Bible. So it's not a one-day trip museum. How many of you have not been? All right, somebody down here is planning a trip for you. They've been, they've paved the way. So I hope you get to go, but it is not the kind of museum you just want to have 1 or 2 hours. If that's all you've got, then go. But it is not a one-trip museum either, because it's just filled with everything Bible. There is a fly-through ride. You feel like you're flying through DC, and you see scripture engraved on different monuments. There is a restaurant, a coffee shop. You can have a break. We have a World Stage Theater. We had a live production recently. There's another one coming. You'll have to look on the website because I can't remember the date. The next one that's coming up is Prince Caspian. So we had C.S. Lewis, The Horse and His Boy, that just ended this summer. It's great. We have concerts coming, Christmas concerts with the Gettys coming up in December. Lots of things to do. So the museum website is a great source if you're looking for something fun to do. You guys don't have a big drive or train ride. So I wish I were closer like you, but for me it's a little further. But we would love for you to go and take your family, your friends, your co-workers, your church group. Encourage your kids or grandkids' school to take their 8th grade class there. A lot of them make that trip to DC, but we found out that a lot of those tour groups are kind of locked into certain things, and they don't take them to the Museum of the Bible. So if you tell them that's where you want to go, they'll take you. We have had a lot of great letters come in from parents that were sponsors on their kids' 8th grade trip. And I can't tell you how many of them, they say the same thing. Our kids, we took them to see all the main things in DC, and at the end we asked them what their favorite thing was, and they said Museum of the Bible. And so that warms our hearts, and that tells us they're doing something right at the museum to touch the hearts of children too. So there are things for kids. There's a children's room on the first floor. We have special exhibits that come in and out all the time. Anyway, there's a lot to do. It's not, as my husband likes to say, it's not your grandmother's museum, which you picture kind of like, just a case with Bibles. It's not like that. It's more engaging, and there's just so much to learn. We'll never learn everything that there is to learn about the Bible, but we can sure try, right? All right, so I'm going to move on here. This is where we are just about 9 months ago. Now we have 2 more babies that would be in this picture. This is my family. And so we're 20 strong now and growing. But God has been good to us, and our kids early on, I just felt like this, the Spirit just laid it on my heart to include our kids in this mission, in this journey. And, I just argued with God for a while when I felt like He was telling us to do this, and I'm saying, don't you have somebody better for this? And I felt like after arguing and debating with God, He said, have you read the Bible? I like to use people that aren't qualified, And I'm like, okay, then that's me. That's me. Sign me up. I'll do it. I'll walk in obedience and do the best that I can. And so that's what we did. But our kids have come along with us, and they have given up their parents a lot of times too. A lot of dinners. Steve and I went to 300 dinners the first 3 years before the museum opened, the 3 years before the museum opened, just to tell people about the museum. And with our kids, our youngest, the one on the far right, she was 5 when we started on the journey, and the one on the left was 11. Now she's just graduated from college, and she's a senior in high school. And so I remember driving to church one Sunday morning, and Steve and I just saying, we just feel like we're supposed to do that. We're having this dialogue, 2 kids in the back seat, and the others were either married or in college, and saying, but I just don't, I don't want to save the world and lose my own children. This is my heart, and our passion is our children. We've always said our first ministry is our children, and God gave them to us, not somebody else. And so we're having this dialogue, and so Steve and I agreed. We just feel like this is just God's telling us to do this. And so I said to the girls in the back seat, girls, Mommy and Daddy feel like God's telling us to do something different. And we don't know how it's going to look, but we feel like that if He's calling us, He's calling you too. What do you guys think? And so I remember Gabby, with her little 5-year-old voice, piped up and said, I have a question. And I said, well, what is it? And she said, well, I have to get on the stage. And it's not what I thought she was going to ask. And I said, well, do you want to? And she said, no, but I'll give all the money in my piggy bank for a museum for the Bible. So that showed her heart is she's a giver, that's who she is. And Grace, our now 23-year-old, she said, well, can we have a discussion about this? I said, well, okay, sure we can. She's like, I want to debate this because I'm not really sure about this. And I said, well, what part do you want to debate? And she said, well, could we negotiate something? I said, yes. She's 11. And I said, we can negotiate. Let's do it. And she said, can you make sure that we have at least one night a week for family time that's quality family time? I said, yes, honey. But I also know you might have to hold me accountable because you know how we all get busy. It's hard. We get so distracted and get busy with things. But she did. She would hold us accountable and try to plan things and remind me like, can we have family game night or, can we cook dinner together tonight? And so that showed her heart. She needed that quality time. But I'm so thankful that God, here we are, 5.5 years later after the museum has opened and our family is on board. Our grandkids now say, Gigi and Poppy, when are you going to take us back to the museum? We want to go back. So it does our heart good because we know that their heart is turned toward Him. And out of that, I want to say I felt compelled to start Women of Legacy at Museum of the Bible. I met a lot of women around tables just like you guys are tonight in those 300 dinners that we went to for those 3 years. People that I didn't know, people I still really, many of them I don't know. But the conversation would often be, tell me about your faith journey. And they would begin to tell me, well, when I was a child or when I was in college or a coworker. And they would most often say my grandmother influenced my faith journey the most, or my mother. And that really stood out to me. Sometimes they would say it was my teacher or a neighbor lady that took me to Vacation Bible School or things like that, or a mentor that I had in college, and they taught me about faith and about Jesus. So anyway, I felt so compelled to help remind women in particular what an opportunity we all have every day with the people right in front of us, whether it be our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews, at our churches. There's so many ways that we can shine our lights. And I, even as a mom, a stay-at-home mom for many years, thought, I wasn't really doing anything. And I was so shamed by that I was doing the most important thing. So anyway, sorry. Just a reminder to all of us that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, God has a place and a purpose for you, and you can be a light to others. So, I'm going to shift gears. I get often asked, what's your most favorite artifact at the museum? And this is it. This is the Elizabeth de Boon Psalter and Book of Hours. It is so beautiful. This picture does not do it justice. This is actually, you can kind of see the reflection. It's behind the glass. But if you get to go, hopefully it will be out. They were going to take it off the floor soon to do some resting of the pages, which they have to do. But it's on vellum. It's a 14th century manuscript. The Psalter is the Psalms. So one side of it would be all the Psalms. The other, the Book of Hours, would be much like a devotional that we would read at certain hours of the day. Elizabeth de Boon had this commissioned in England, in 14th century England. And that would be during a time where a lot of people couldn't read. But it would have taken years and a lot of money to have this commissioned because, well, it's on vellum, so they didn't just have paper like we do, right? It would have been a lot of animals that were the skins that they used to write on this and to prepare these animal skins. But it has illumination, or the illustration, the beautifulness on every single page, which is very unique because normally, because it was so expensive, they would have just done like the first of a chapter, right? The beautiful page. Now every page doesn't look like the one on the right, but it has something beautiful. It's real gold that they crushed and put on there, and they crushed the gemstones, and it's still so vibrant and beautiful. It was well cared for and loved. And when we acquired this artifact, we had donated it to the museum. And one day I walked into the vault, and one of the curators said, you know, I know you guys have been doing some genealogy. My husband geeks out on genealogy. Anybody else in here, ancestry stuff? I'm like, that's one hobby that he would have besides work. And so I had told him, you know, years ago, like, you know, there's some of the women in my family have said that we're related to the, you know, Queen of England. And he didn't believe it. He was like, yeah, we all are. Well, we might all be, I don't know. But anyway, so for Mother's Day, he hired a professional genealogist to do my ancestry, and come to find out, Queen Elizabeth was my 9th cousin. So this curator knew that, and he said, you know, do you know anything about Elizabeth de Boon? I said, how do you spell de Boon? You know, I've never heard of her, don't know anything about her. He was like, you might want to look something up about her. So I did. We began to explore. And her life was very hard. I touch on it a little bit in Only One Life. But she was betrothed at the age of 3, which her father was a baron in England. Her father-in-law was a baron in England. You know, it's just kind of what they did back then. And she, at the age, I think, of 7, she was in the Tower of London with her mother and her siblings for 7 months. Because they wouldn't let the king's consort, I don't know what that means, into their castle. Her mother wouldn't let them into the castle. So I don't know exactly what that means, but they had values. So anyway, so they were in the Tower of London. She had her first child when she was 15, another son at 18, and was widowed shortly thereafter. Her father-in-law and her father died torturous deaths. I mean, it was like the hung, drawn, and quartered kind of things. It was a really violent time in the history amongst the barons in England. And so she had a really hard life, and then was in another arranged marriage with the name de Boon. And it was during that time period in her second marriage that she had this piece commissioned. I think it tells us that she valued the word, as she could have done a lot of things with the money and the resources that would have taken to do that, because, you know, you have to have a scribe to write everything, like by candlelight with a quill. And then you have the artisans then that would do all of these beautiful illustrations. And that tells me she valued that. That's what she invested in. It would have taken a lot of years to have that commissioned. Anyway, so Elizabeth valued the Bible. I think we can feel pretty certain of that. Little side note, you see the 1209 at the bottom of the left page. This was owned by the Astor family for a time in the U.S. history, and they did not have a base for the Statue of Liberty. Remember, France gifted us with the statue, but we didn't have a base to put it on. So this was in an exhibit in the U.S. to raise funds for the base of the Statue of Liberty. Just kind of a side note that's fun. Anyway, Elizabeth, I think, is just one of those women that the more I've learned about her, the more I admire and respect her. And I've thought about her legacy. Did she pray for her future generations? Because I'm here to tell you, I found out she was my 21st great-grandmother. And that stuck with me, you know, and it compels me to think, I need to really be intentional with my time and prayers for my future generations. I can have an impact when I'm gone, because my legacy, for me and for you, it's the story that lives on after we're gone. And we get to help do things while we're here that can impact our legacy when we're not here anymore. So I know what I want mine to be, and I hope you'll be thinking about what you want yours to be and ways that God can lead you and guide you to leave an impact in this world here and when you're not here. So that's something that's near and dear to my heart, and I hope that you'll think about that. The title, Only One Life, that we gave the book came from a poem by C.T. Studd, who was a missionary that also had 5 daughters. So anyway, he wrote this poem, and a portion of it is, only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. And that's been a motto for our family and our home. I hope you'll consider it for yours too. I like to end now with a verse. I just always like to have a verse that we just read together. There's so many great ones we could read, but I've chosen this one for today. So if you can see it, read along with me. My son, keep your father's commandment. And forsake not your mother's teaching. Bind them on your heart always. Tie them around your neck. When you walk, they will lead you. When you lie down, they will watch over you. And when you awake, they will talk with you. I think that's just an encouraging thing to think that the scripture can comfort us, can bring us peace and direction and protection. So here's the museum today. We're so grateful for what God's done and being able to be a part of the journey. We invite you to join us and be a part of the journey too, and go make the museum part of your family's legacy. Be a part of it. Show your family, your friends, your connections, the Bible that you love. And if you don't know much about it, find out more about it. If you are like me, I want to be a lifelong learner. There's so much to learn, and I want to use my life well. I'm going to leave with this video.